Thank you everybody for being here. Welcome to the East Harris County Manufacturers Association Best Practices discussion on electronic permitting and integration with lockout tagout. As a reminder, the mission statement of EHCMA is EHCMA Best Practices is to promote safety and sustainability within the East Harris County Manufacturers Association community and identifying and sharing those best practices. So we have Reid with us today from Invista, Paul Shelton from Arkema, and Wendy Key from Air Products. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started and talking about this. So, Ridge, I'm going to start with you. What are some of the biggest benefits of electronic permitting?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest thing is you kind of streamline the whole process. So every day it's a repeatable process that contractors and employees can go through every single day. Um, Other part with that is you bring in that smart technology. So when you answer certain questions in your permit, it prompts you to do additional precautions. So like let's say if you say there's fall hazards, it's going to require you to do some type of fall protection. So there's that checks and balances that really helps out and make sure we don't forget anything. And then also for the approval process, some of the higher risk work require additional approvals, and that can all be built into the system. So once those are checked, it automatically requires those approvals before you can issue the permit. There's a whole host of other items that we probably go into too.
Yeah, absolutely. I know for us, the same thing. Like we really liked the electronic element of it, right? And the way we look at it is you create a task, it doesn't let you move past that task until it sees that it's been completed. Sometimes you go back to paper permits. Sometimes people might skip a step or hey, it's easier to do this first or something when actual you want a process flow. So by having an electronic, it actually creates that process flow that you have to follow. It's kind of almost
Absolutely.
for an HSE person it's regimented, right?
Right.
But that's also one of the challenges because as you're developing it with whoever software company you use, your core team that you select, you need to get those stakeholders on there because as HSE professionals, we can work and we can create a very compliant system, right? But then you put it into practice and they're like, hey, it doesn't work that way out in the field. Oh, hey, these are the challenges we have. So that was, some of the successes that we had was really having that core group with all those stakeholders represented that were able to help us with that process. So, Paul,
Well, Arkema has been looking at electronic process for the last couple of years, and one of the reasons I'm on this team is to try to find some good best practices and be able to take that back to the organization. We've seen different types of electronics. Some are all electronic, which to me sounds very good because then you don't have to worry about the paper. Others are kind of a mixture, and so it's interesting to see how that works within the various companies that have already implemented. And one of the reasons we're looking at that is for all the things you've been talking about is to ensure accuracy, make sure it's more, repeatable, that we're not missing steps. If there is something that's needed, that it's prompted for somebody to follow up with it. If it needs a higher signature, that it gets that and it doesn't allow the permit to advance until that's done. So a lot of good things with the electronic process, and that's what we're looking for.
okay. How about you, Wendy?
Well, Air Products is now we're piloting it, and, so just really getting started. What we really want is visibility, and with electronic permits, you get visibility of what's going on in the field from a great distance away because we're scattered out all over the United States, and we wanna be able to see the process and even the work that's going on. We would like to see some efficiencies and productivity out of it to kinda help our teams out because sometimes the paper process can get cumbersome. But if you design it incorrectly, so can the electronic permitting process. You don't gain any efficiency out of it, and because we're just getting started, I'm here to see what are the pitfalls that other companies have fallen into, so that maybe we can try to avoid some of those.
That's great. That's great. Because, I think, some of the biggest issues that a lot of the people that have already done it, when you talk to them, those challenges, a lot of us have had those same challenges. So, back to Ridge, what were some of the challenges you had? And were some of them, maybe centered around mobility?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of them. So I've been to several companies who have done electronic permitting. We've done it, with different programs through both ways. But one of the biggest one was is having a Wi-Fi network or something to connect to. So we have had a big tank farm. So question was, how was he going to be able to connect out in the field, be able to print permits if it's all electronic? So we ended up building a whole entire truck rig with a printer, with Wi-Fi and all that stuff in the truck. So when he went out and did his rounds, he's able to do the permits. That, and of course, getting everyone accustomed to everything on the computer can be a challenge at some sites. So
Yeah, absolutely. I know during our implementation and when we were working with our developer who helped us with the system, of course we were like, hey, we want to go 100% mobile from day one. I'm very thankful that we listened to the people that worked with us because they were like, man, we love the gung ho attitude, but we've done this with several other companies, and what we've seen, do it in a phased approach. We did it in a 3-phased approach, and it helped us so much because we started off where we were just switching to the electronic system, and then we were still printing out the actual permits on paper that had a barcode at the top of it. So that way, at the end of the day, those people can come back to that permit office and scan it and close out those permits electronically. But what it did for the implementation is the majority of the people that were truly affected were the people who initiated and filled out the permits. It wasn't everybody else in the field because they were already used to getting a permit with the information on it, right? And so that helped us out a lot before, we put the system in place, and then about 18 months later, we went mobile. And we still have a hybrid approach because you can still issue a permit on paper because you're gonna have those contractors who don't have a tablet.
So how's the contractors accepted this?
Very well. How about for you guys?
yeah, I mean, overall, it's been pretty well liking because they can view it on their cell phone, and almost everyone has a cell phone these days. So it's been pretty easy for them. But there are some hurdles with that too, because depending on what software you have to create an account to be able to have all the access to all the parts of the program. So one of the things is getting those people, in the system first, and then kind of getting them trained up on it, on how to use it. But for like the day-to-day people are there every day, it's not a problem because they use it all the time. So there can be that hurdle for like those outages and turnarounds, or those new people that come in where you have to do those additional trainings. But they all got a hang of it pretty fast so far. So
Yeah, that brings up a really good discussion point with, because you said you allow them to use their cell phones, and we can get into it. That could be a whole nother roundtable discussion,
yeah,
is cell phone use in the plants. But but in reality, for us, like our IT department, really, we wanted to keep it closed where it has to go through our VPN. So our nested contractors, we provide those tablets, and they all have Kuraray email addresses. So they can use the tablets, goes through the VPN, but our third parties, they don't. So those are the ones we do the hybrid approach. But in reality, probably close to 95% of our permits that we write every day are going to be with our nested contractors. So we just know our operators are trained, they understand. Our third party contractors, it's really the only big difference for them is having to come back to some place and scan that barcode and close out the permit. Other than that, it's a piece of paper permit that tells them exactly what they have to have. It uses what's called a HIRA, which is a hazard identification risk assessment, which basically drives your permit because it tells you what you're doing. These are the hazards involved with that job, and these are all the controls that you have to have in place to do that job safely. And so by going through and verifying all of that, they're able to go through just like any other permit.
So what happens when the IT system goes down?
Well, we still have the ability to go paper backup if we have to. We went through a major turnaround last year, and even with shutting down the we shut down the electricity for the whole site. We made the ability to have those our system on backup power, and we're able to keep writing those permits. Because one of the good things is a lot of these systems, maybe they're cloud-based or something. So even if you lose power, you lose your system, they still have it.
It's a good point.
Same for us. We also went to paper backup if we have troubles with the system or IT, anything like that.
So what do you think Rich, was the biggest challenge for you as far as moving that direction?
The biggest challenge, kind of hard to say. It's a really big buy off from all of your site, right? Because it's going to be affecting everyone. So I think the biggest challenge was trying to get everyone aligned, like kind of with that new process. Not just aligned, but willing to accept it and actually working to integrate all their items into that electronic permitting process. And that's probably the biggest hurdle. But I think once they got into it, saw how it operated, how it worked, I think that really showed them kind of what it's capable of, and really kind of got them on board with the whole going electronic with the permitting process.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think there's so many people, nobody likes change, right? I mean, you got 30-year operators out there, you got 30-year nested contractors out there. They don't like change. And when they started seeing how easy it was, I mean, we have guys that have been out there forever, and they're like, man, this is easier than Facebook, because it prompts them, it tells them when they're missing a step, it prompts them that says, you forgot the verification signature or whatever, because it will not let them move on until they get it. And I think our biggest challenge was, like you said, you talked about the Wi-Fi network earlier, which we have that, but initially we were doing it off of 5G, which is great. We all, you have, you're using cell phone towers and stuff like that, and it all works really good, except when you're behind a distillation column in a remote area of the plant, right? And that seems to be the hardest part when you're talking to people and it's dealing with work. Because in the training, I would, we'd talk about it, and I'd say, look, if your wife is calling you or you need to get a hold of her about dinner, you're going to walk 5 feet over here and make sure you get contact, right? It should be the same way with this. You figure out, okay, over here behind XYZ column, I don't have good service, but over here I do. Those are things that we kind of learned in the process, and there was some struggles early, but people get it, they understand. The good thing about it, when it's an app-based, if you lose connection, you can still work in it, and then when you get that connection, it'll resync. If you're working from a URL-based, you lose connection, and you didn't save, it's all gone. So that's one of the things that's really good. Like all these providers, it's a dual system. You have an app that you work off of a tablet, or you have the URL on the computer that you can work off of.
So I know that you said you're starting a pilot program at one of your sites, or?
We are. We have, I believe, 5 pilot programs going on in the United States right now. We started with the electronic permitting in Europe and then moved it over here. One of the things that we're struggling with just to get started is just making sure that all of the information that we put in is, verifying all, our valves and our layout, and how do we want to break that up within the system. So really just the technical information that we put in there to get started. Um, and that's taking a little while.
Now, are you guys looking at software where you're able to, and I don't know if everyone uses SAP. I know we use SAP. I say that because most people do. Um, so are you using a system that is integratable with SAP?
Yes. So but it's calling us out to make sure that everything that's in SAP is what is in the field, to make sure that if and that is taking a little bit of time. Um,
Yeah, those are some of those are like going through the workflows and going through all the, yes, documentation updates and things like that in the beginning.
because in electronic, you can't just say some valve. You have to be very specific, rightfully so. Um, where we go, with a paper permit, you, you can kind of fudge it. Well, not really fudge it, but
No, you can fudge them.
you can fudge it. You can fudge it, but you don't have to be as disciplined there, in everything that's entered into SAP. With the electronic permit, it's going to force you to be more disciplined. Um,
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to the first part of the discussion when we were talking about it. It's like the information that you're putting in there has to be right, and it has to be, especially when you're dealing with an SAP or an Oracle, whatever system you're using, because you're going off your plant item, right? And so one of the examples that I did when we first started and I was looking at electronic permitting was I did a test for my plant manager and some other managers. And I took 4 of our supervisors who wrote permits at the time, and I gave them a piece of equipment. I gave them the same job packet, gave them each a permit, and told them each to write a permit. How many different variations of that permit do you think I got back?
how many do you get for?
Mhm.
4.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you see with electronic permitting. It's more consistency. You're going to get the same permits written for the same job, and it just helps. And it helps because when we talk about all this with consistency and efficiency and all this stuff, yeah, we got to remember that all of that relates to safety. All of it relates to safety because if we're doing this, we're creating a safer process as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of good things about that too. Talking about kind of repeatable is that, there's a lot of those same jobs that we do every day, right? Or not every day, but weekly, monthly, the PMs, right? So you can actually go in there and save templates for those specific pieces of equipment or those specific jobs, and it'll keep the hazards and all the things already on there. So what an operator can do is go in and pull up that template and then be able to copy that to what they're going to do that day, review it, and make sure they have all the things addressed. But having that already there populated with information can make it a lot faster. Kind of the day-to-day stuff.
I think that's another reason we're looking at it is the efficiency that goes with it. And we believe it's going to be a cost savings for us to be able to get the permitting because typically it takes a little while. The maintenance person or the contractor shows up. Hey, I need a permit. They got to go through the process. And it takes a while. That's lost productivity, costs us money. But if we can streamline that through an electronic version, that's kind of another plus for the system.
Yeah, one of the benefits of it as well is because it's electronic, there's so many metrics you can get out of it. It's almost I mean, we're just scratching the surface. And I was just the other day I was messing around and I was creating a Power BI just for like the average time it starts because it's electronic and tells you all the different states that it moves in. So ours started the initiate state and then to the verified and active. And then you can also go from verified and active until it's closed out, and so that's the actual work. So I just put in that Power BI looking at all the permits done that month to see what was the average time it took for a permit to go from the initiate to verified and active where they were actually working on their tools. You can get that information from it, but then secondly, be able to do how long were these permits in the verified and active state? Because guess what? That's the time on tools. And that's what your maintenance department wants to hear. That's what your business people want to hear. What was the average time it took to fix that piece of equipment? And this is all information that we're able to get from the electronic permitting system that you're not able to get from that. I mean, you can get it from a paper permit system, but you're going to have a team of people looking through that paperwork.